Alright, well, this is on a different laptop and maybe not the best of settings that we can do, but this is the best like we could come up with. I thought maybe I'd just have to use my computer, but then I thought, well, we'll use the one-eyed monster here. Oh, I can never remember that character's name from Monsters, Inc. Mike Wozniak, not Wozniak. Well, you understand what I mean. Okay. So where you had left off with is a lot of these chest muscles that we see here. I don't know how well that's going to go because I really don't think that we can zoom in on that. But where you had left off with, this was the very first muscle that you had perhaps dissected right here. And as we get this through from the top side, cut that a little more. Because you correctly identified it, but what we left off with was this muscle right here. Okay, because there's a series of 4 muscles that we see here. There's one on the shoulder that we have in humans. This one humans do not have, but these 2 are ones that humans do have. Okay, so I want you to think about that for just a moment. We'll start from the top down. So what is it that's in the shoulders that humans would have? And let's see here. Maybe I might turn him around, at least for this one anyway. So I don't know if that makes it any easier to see. I try to get more tilting on there. So I'm going to hit pause for just a moment and we'll try this again. Okay, so I had that tilted as far down as I could, so got the front tilted forward. So then I decided to maybe turn this on the side. I think that's a little easier to see. So I want you to think about what muscle. This is the first one that you identified. It's one that we don't have in humans. If you said the pectoral antebrachialis, that would be right. But then this one is one that we have in humans. Cats have 3 of those. And what we said is we want to take those in a series. This is the top muscle. And think about where that's located, which is back here. If this is the humerus bone, which it is, remember we have a deltoid tuberosity that would be located on that of humans, and that makes this a deltoid muscle right here. And since it's up on top, that makes this the clavodeltoid right here. Again, the pectoral antebrachialis right here. And then the very next 2 sets of muscles that we would see, of course, is the the size differential. Don't go by that because the pectoralis major is up here on top. Therefore, the one beneath it, even though it's larger, will be the pectoralis minor. Okay, so we have pectoralis major and pectoralis minor. Okay, then I think the next place we moved to was that of the abdomen, and with some of those abdominal muscles, some of them are really easy to find, some of them are maybe a little more difficult. I'm just going to remove parts of this fat tissue. I don't know if you remember having that on here, but we'll go ahead and remove parts of this, and that'll help you out when you get back home too. Just gives us a little more exposure in that area. Okay, there we go. And then what we had done is there are 4 abdominal muscles that what we would see here. Okay, so in this case, since this is what's on top, okay, I want you to think about what muscle that is. Okay, right here we had established those fibers are running in this direction then, so that makes that the external oblique. Okay, and what we see differently, okay, is remember one way, not just because of where it's located, but how the fibers are running. we see the external oblique is running in this direction, and when we take that top layer off, we see two different distinct muscle designs down here, which, just like in humans, if the external oblique is on the outside, which it is, that would make the ones on the inside not just the internal oblique, but also one that starts with a T. Okay, and if you had said transverse abdominis, that would be correct. And the reason that we know that, okay, is we need actually a little more exposure here, and this is really not cooperating the way that I would like. Okay. Make it a little incision there for you. Okay. I think we need to get further down into the legs here. Because it's what happens is we can see where one muscle ends and then actually another begins. Okay, so again, external oblique here, and underneath, no surprise, we have the internal oblique. Okay, and then that runs up to right here where this would stop. Okay, and then we have the transverse abdominis right next to there, and then running down the midlines here. Okay, you'd have the rectus abdominis, and we're going to leave those intact, I believe, because the best way to visualize that is you have a set running on either side here. The rectus abdominis is on both sides, so then that's a superficial muscle along with the external oblique, and then you have underneath there the internal oblique, which then again only goes to a certain point, which that muscle fiber, those muscle fibers end here, okay, and then that separates your transverse abdominis from your internal oblique here. Okay, then I think your next set of muscles, I think we had went to the shoulder area, and we'll just pick up where you had left off. We got two spinatus muscles back here, and we'll try to get a little separation here. And again, we have two different types of muscles up here as well. That's what we're trying to leave as much of this intact as possible, because we want to be able to get down into here. Okay. And one of the clues that we gave, and us as humans, we have that as well. Typically, I'll tap on this because we know what bone structure would this be here, back here in the shoulder, okay, or below the shoulder. Here's the shoulder. Beneath that, again, would be your scapula. And then you have that spine of the scapula that's going to separate two muscles there. The one on top would be the supraspinatus, and then beneath there would be, of course, your infraspinatus. And one of the aspects we need to be able to do is get further down into that shoulder area. And I think once we do this, I'd like to say I did this intentionally, skipping this muscle that I'm holding right here, but I did get a little ahead of myself. Because remember, we had started back here with a deltoid muscle. Okay, remember, that would be the clavideltoid. And these go in a series just like your trapezial muscles do. The clavideltoid, then we see what's called your spinal deltoid, which is right here. Okay, and you had located that before you left. Here's your spinal deltoid. Then we said it kind of makes a Y here. We have the spinal deltoid moving in that direction. And then here, since this has a levitating function, that would be your levator. Go ahead and finish that. Levator what? Okay. Levator scapular ventralis. Okay. And then the third of the deltoid muscles is here. Remember, they go in a series. Clavideltoid, spinal deltoid, which is right here. Then the one in the middle is this triangular shaped muscle right here, which would be the acromial deltoid. Okay, so those are your deltoids: clavicle, acromial, and then spinal deltoid right there. Then for your trapezial muscles, okay, that's going to follow a similar pattern as well. You have, okay, the one that starts with an A, way up here in the neck. Okay, so we'll try to hold him up here. It's triangular and orientation, just like that. And if you said that that is the clavicle trapezius, that would be correct. So there is your clavicle trapezius. Okay. Then as we move a little further down, right here above your scapula, it's one that starts with an A. This is the clavicle trapezius. That makes this the acromial trapezius then. And then down here, the one that starts with an S, that's also triangular in shape, and one that probably should have done a little better job of explaining that before you left. But here we are. Regardless, it'll be okay. All right. Because now we want to expose some of these deeper tissue shoulder muscles. Because remember, we have the spine of the scapula right here. And then you have the supraspinatus here. Then underneath that, you would have your infraspinatus. And there's really no distinct way of saying, okay, it's this big, it's the size of a dime, it's the size of a quarter, it's the size of a penny. It's more so being associated with where it's located, more so than its size. Hopefully we can use that as a clue as to what it is we're trying to identify. But again, the major difference between that is that spine of that scapula. Then there are three more muscles that we'd want to identify in this area. And one of them would be your teres major. And then humans also have these two sets of muscles as well that start with an R. They're just not located in the same area that what we would picture or visualize that with cats. And the reason being is because their movements are going to be different, because again, we are quadrupedal. I don't think we used to crawl on all four limbs, but now we are bipedal in nature, so we walk on two legs. But cats, being quadrupedal animals, their movements are just a little more complex, therefore giving these two muscles, and it's probably hard to see on that camera because I think I got that zoomed in as far as it will go as well. Remember, we have the supraspinatus up here, and one of the things that I don't think you're going to be able to see that on the camera. Okay, I've got my probe stuck in underneath there, because here we have the difference between the supraspinatus right here, and then this is actually one of the rhomboid muscles. Okay, don't go by per se where it's located. It's just not quite as big as this one down here, because this is also a rhomboid muscle down here. Okay, and with that, we'll kind of try to hold him up here. Okay, because underneath this acromial trapezius and spinal trapezius, we have this muscle called the rhomboid major. Then another shoulder muscle that is also in that of humans, but also in cats, is right next to the rhomboid major that starts with the letter T. Okay, so I want you to think about what might that muscle be. Okay, if you said the teres major, that would be correct. Okay, the supraspinatus, the infraspinatus beneath that spine of the scapula. Okay, supraspinatus, infraspinatus. Okay, then you have the rhomboid major. There's some fat tissue on top of that. The teres major down here, and maybe I can get the probe underneath there just a little bit. I can maybe push him through there so you can actually see that there's a muscle right there. That is the teres major then. And then you have the rhomboid minor up here. Just because it's smaller in nature, it's not quite as big as the rhomboideus major, which I know gets to be kind of confusing. We name muscles because of where they're oriented or if they're bigger than others, but regardless, rhomboideus major and rhomboid or rhomboideus minor, and then the teres major. Okay, then we moved on to your triceps muscles. Okay, and we've got 3 of those. And typically we can say that we have something very similar in that of humans. We just say triceps brachii. But in this case, there's actually 3 identifications that go along with that. We have the triceps here and triceps here. Okay, but think about what is the difference between, okay, we can do a little separation here. Maybe if I go through from this side. It's actually easier to do it this way. Once that pokes through, then we can take our scapula. I did that all morning. Not the scapula, scalpel. Okay, yeah, take my scapula. That won't go very well. The scalpel, okay, and once we've separated this muscle now, we have 3 of those triceps muscles. You have the medial head, the lateral head, and the long head. Those are your 3. Medial, lateral, and long head. I'm trying to be coordinated enough to move those fingers independent of one another. But here, which triceps muscle is this one? If you said the long head, that would be correct, because notice this one is more so on the lateral side, therefore making this the triceps brachii lateral head. I thought I had, there we go. I did have that separated, because once you look in between there, and there again, I think you had observed and located that muscle before you left. There is your triceps brachii medial head underneath there. So we can really locate that. My probe is underneath there. There is your brachii medial head, brachii lateral head, and brachii long head. Comes in a series of 3, so no surprise. It's called the triceps then. Then on the back side here, okay, we have, this is actually a muscle right here as well, and just kind of removing this, just try to get it out of your way. And it's a very large back muscle, okay, and of course that would be the latissimus dorsi. Okay, so I think that's everything that we've covered so far. So we'll go back through these again very quickly. Clavodeltoid, that's one that can be located from either the front or the back. The pectoanabrachialis, pectoralis major, the pectoralis minor beneath that. Okay, then we can go to the back side. Okay, and one thing about this way we can look at, part of this is the external oblique, but this muscle right here in this definition line would be, again, your latissimus dorsi. Okay, so we kind of have that started, but it's where you look how the fibers are oriented differently is how you would tell the difference between your external oblique and your latissimus dorsi. Then we go to your trapezial muscles up here in the neck. Which one is that possibly? Remember, it's up on top, so it follows the same pattern as these, this one, and that one. So if you said the clavotrapezius, that would be correct. Then the one here, it's not all of this because this is actually almost three muscles in one. Clavicle trapezius, the acromial trapezius, then the spinal trapezius down here. A series of three. 1, 2, and 3. Because when we look here, we've got the clavicle deltoid, the spinal deltoid here on the bottom, and then the acromial deltoid right there. Okay, then today we got this dissected a little further back to give us these 4 muscles down here. Wait a minute. 1, 2, 5 muscles. Sorry, had to think about that for a moment. Think about what 5 muscles would possibly be located there. And that would be your 2 spinatus muscles, okay, 2 rhomboideus muscles, and then the 5th one would be that teres major. So when we look at this, we see the dividing line of this scapula. Okay, I don't know if you can hear that on the audio, but that makes this the supraspinatus, the infraspinatus right there. And of course, this being because of the size, the rhomboideus major, the rhomboideus minor, and the teres major located right there. Then to wrap things up, we're looking at about 2:30 right now, so I better get this wrapped up and ready to go for next hour. Okay, we have the external oblique right here. And underneath that, of course, would be your internal oblique, and that will terminate, okay, because we got to be careful and paying attention when we're asking what these muscles are. Because just because we're pointing in this vicinity underneath the external oblique doesn't automatically make it the internal oblique, doesn't automatically make it the transverse abdominis. Those 2 muscles are located there, but we want you to know the difference between the 2. Okay? Because this internal oblique will go up here and terminate at this spot right here where it turns into the transverse abdominis. Okay? And then that will continue until you reach the midline, and which on top we have the superficial rectus abdominis. Okay. And I think if we're really careful, we could probably move that back a little further so we can actually see, oh yeah, the rectus abdominis is a superficial muscle. So I'll spend a little bit of time here maybe. Okay. Very delicately try to move that back. Okay. Okay. Because once you actually remove that top layer of fascia tissue, it actually becomes a little more apparent where that rectus abdominis is then. Okay, so I think that's about where we want to stop for today. We'll be in class tomorrow with the USD medical students, and then Thursday we'll review one more time. And Friday we will have our evaluations over these abdominal muscles, these chest muscles, and then you could say the back or back and shoulder muscles. And of course that includes the arms. Okay, so that's about all we have time for today. So we will stop at that point in time. And notice if when you come back, if you want the experience, you can always move over to this side and dissect underneath here. Okay, underneath the acromial trapezius here. Just you can actually see a lot of these muscles, okay, where the spinal trapezius is, the acromial trapezius, acromial trapezius and clavicle trapezius, all the way up here in the neck. Okay, so again, probably when you get back is when we will be doing the legs down here. Now, is there any one aspect that's more difficult than the other? I really don't know. To me, I've always thought the shoulders have been the most difficult, probably because there's just so many of them, and because there's just not a whole lot of space to move around. When we get down into the legs, those muscles are quite a bit larger, and it gives you more of an opportunity to see how those muscles are actually oriented. Even in your case, I see there's a little bit of fat tissue back in here that will probably have to be removed, but nothing that I believe that you can't handle. I think you're just fine with that. So again, that concludes what we wanted to cover for today, so we will catch up to you next time.